Welcome to this explainer. Pull up a chair or honestly, let's just sit down on the floor for a sec. I really want this to feel like an intimate late night conversation because today we are diving headfirst into something that almost never gets the honest, unfiltered attention it actually deserves. I'm talking about the massive, overwhelming post-grad anxiety crisis. We spend so much time celebrating the walk across the stage, right? But we rarely talk about the sheer panic that hits the literal second you step off of it.
Because once the graduation dust finally settles, the parties end, and life is, supposed to feel somewhat stable, this terrifying, absolutely inevitable question hits you right in the chest. What am I doing with my life? It's this sudden, jarring realization that the script you've been handed for the last 16 years has just abruptly run out of pages.
So let's really look at that inevitable question and the sudden shift it brings. Think about it. For years, your path was laid out perfectly. You had syllabuses, you had grades telling you exactly how you were doing, clear semesters with defined beginnings and ends. But then, boom, post-grad panic. Suddenly, you're facing a total lack of structure. I mean, there are no letter grades for adulting, right? And that complete absence of a roadmap, it breeds absolute panic. But here is the thing, and we really need to normalize this fear right now, because you are definitely not alone. The fear of the future is entirely normal. You absolutely do not have to have it all figured out right now. Seriously. I remember sitting in my room like a month after graduation, refreshing my email at 3 a.m., completely paralyzed because I genuinely thought I was the only one without some master plan. Society makes us feel like being anxious about the unknown means we're failing. It doesn't. It is completely okay to feel terrified. Acknowledging that fear together and realizing that literally none of your peers have it fully figured out either is the vital first step in navigating this whole mess. And a huge part of that mess is the reality of rejection. We really need to talk about facing the inbox. We regret to inform you. Just hearing that phrase probably makes your stomach drop, right? It's the universal sting of the post-grad rejection email. When you're pouring your absolute heart into cover letters, agonizing over every single resume bullet point, getting these cold, automated responses, it feels like a direct attack on your potential. We have all been there, staring at the glowing screen, letting those words trigger just a crushing wave of inadequacy and self-doubt. And it builds into this exhausting, vicious cycle. You apply endlessly, sending your resume into the digital void. You wait in absolute silence, then you get the rejection. And immediately you question everything, your major, your skills, your entire worth. But seeing it mapped out like this, it helps us realize it's a systemic, grueling process. It is not a personal reflection of your value. Which brings us to the perfect plan myth and all these crazy unrealistic expectations. Society places these massive, totally unrealistic pressures on young adults. We are somehow expected to just land the dream job immediately out of college. We're told we absolutely need a rigid 5-year plan, and we're pressured to achieve instant financial success. These expectations are everywhere. They're all over social media. They come up in family conversations at the dinner table, making you feel like a total failure if you haven't checked every single monumental box instantly. At the core of this pressure is the societal myth of the perfect plan. It's this idea that career paths are perfectly linear and predictable. You go from A to B to C and boom, you're successful. Well, let me be very clear here. This is a complete myth. Real life is beautifully messy. It loops back on itself, it takes wild detours, and it rarely, if ever, follows a straight, predictable line. So let's pivot to actually figuring it out, the fine art of improvisation. We need to fundamentally redefine what a career plan actually is. A modern career plan, it's an evolving, messy experiment rather than a rigid, permanent map. You don't need a map, you need a compass. You try a job, you learn what you absolutely hate, you adapt your goals, and you pivot as you experience new things. Approaching your post-grad life as an experiment takes so much pressure off. Actually, scratch that. It doesn't just take the pressure off, it changes the game completely. A failed experiment isn't a failure of character, it's just new data. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this late night explainer, remember this. It is entirely okay to figure things out as you go. Give yourself some grace. Making it up as you go isn't failing. It's simply how life works. You're in a massive transition period. And that anxiety you were feeling, it's just the friction of growth. You were allowed to take a breath and realize that you have plenty of time to build the life you want. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. What if not having a plan is exactly where you're meant to be right now? Seriously, perhaps this immense uncertainty, this total lack of a rigid syllabus, is the exact blank canvas you need to discover who you actually are outside of a classroom. Embrace the unknown, keep experimenting, and remember, you're doing just fine. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.